They laughed at you. Loud, real loud. Not because you were funny, but because they thought you were fucking harmless. You walked into rooms and they stopped making eye contact. Not out of respect, but because they didn't think you mattered. You were the easy one to dismiss. The one they didn't see coming. The one they talked over, laughed off, pushed aside, smiled fake at. You remember the way they whispered behind fake grins. How they'd say "oh" when you tried to speak your truth. How they looked past you like you were see-through. How they turned your silence into stupidity. Your patience into weakness. Your peace into passivity. And you let them. You fucking let them. Because deep down, you weren't trying to prove shit. You weren't chasing clout. You weren't barking just to bark. You were watching, clocking patterns, noting weaknesses, learning the game from the shadows, while they danced in the spotlight like clowns at their own funeral. You sat in rooms full of egos, knowing damn well you had the sharpest blade at the table, but kept your knife tucked while they showed off plastic swords. You smiled when they mocked you. You nodded when they talked down. You played dumb like a fucking Oscar-winning performance. Because deep down, you knew. You knew what was cooking inside you. And it wasn't noise. It was nuclear. See, they don't get it. They don't get what it's like to be the joke. To be the one nobody's scared of. To be underestimated so deeply it becomes a superpower. They don't know how heavy it feels to swallow every damn insult, like it's just air, until your lungs are full of fire and your silence becomes the loudest fucking scream. You weren't weak, you were loading, and when the time came, you didn't raise your voice, you flipped the whole fucking table. Chairs flying, drinks spilling, smiles gone, fake friends frozen. Suddenly the punchline had teeth, and you weren't the butt of the joke. You were the motherfucker writing the final chapter. You didn't snap, you activated. Because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And playing dumb ain't dumb when you're the only one playing chess in a room full of checkers. They thought you had no cards, till you laid down a royal flush in blood. Not actual blood, psychological blood. The kind that stains reputations, the kind that leaves echoes in rooms you've already left. Now they scrambling, backpedaling, rewriting history like they knew all along. They didn't. They never fucking knew. Because they were too busy loving the sound of their own voice to notice the ticking time bomb sitting 2 chairs away. And here's the part they'll never admit. They needed you quiet. They needed you dumb. Because your truth, it terrifies them. Your fire, it exposes everything they tried to hide behind noise, status, and staged confidence. You showed them what real power looks like. Not the loud kind, not the flashy, desperate, validation-hungry kind, but the kind that walks in with scars and no apologies. The kind that watches you drown in your own ego and never lifts a fucking finger. You didn't need to prove yourself. You needed to remember yourself. And the moment you did, everything shifted. They thought they were playing you, but you were letting them dig their own grave, nice and deep, decorated with every backhanded compliment, every snide laugh, every time they smirked while you swallowed rage. You didn't lose your mind. You found it. Buried underneath all that gaslighting, belittling, and fake-ass concern. You were never the fool. You were the one who could afford to play one. Because you didn't need a crowd. You needed clarity. And now they see it. Not because you told them, but because the room went cold when you stood the fuck up. They ain't laughing anymore. They're trying to remember what the hell they ever said to you. They're asking if you're okay. Too late. You ain't broken. You're just done pretending to be something smaller so they could feel big. You ain't here to fit in. You're here to end cycles. You're here to remind monsters why they fear the quiet ones. You're here to carry the weight of 10 betrayals and still spit truth with blood in your teeth. You ain't the crazy one. You're the storm they prayed would never come. The black sheep with fangs. The misfit with a war map. The outsider who stopped giving a single fuck. And when the dust settles, they won't remember what they said. But they'll never forget the day you flipped that fucking table. With a grin and a fire in your eyes they will never be able to kill. Ah, but they hate that part, don't they? That moment where the script flips and the so-called nobody starts walking like the whole goddamn room belongs to them. You can see it in their faces, the glitch, the static in their polished little act. Because the person they mocked ain't playing small anymore. And that makes their whole fake-ass world start to crack. They used to roll their eyes when you spoke. Now they hold their breath. Used to cut you off mid-sentence. Now they hang on every fucking word like their survival depends on it. And it does, because the version of you they used to gaslight, that version's dead. You buried that soft-spoken version under a mountain of fuck this and lit the match. They don't know what to do with you anymore. You don't flinch. You don't shrink. You don't chase validation like a lost puppy begging for scraps. You walk like somebody who saw the underbelly of the beast and laughed. Like somebody who cried in silence for years and turned every single tear into a goddamn weapon. Like somebody who knows exactly what betrayal tastes like and still bites down on truth like it owes you rent. You carry pain like it's fashion, like it's armor stitched by every backstab, every rejection, every "you're not good enough" that you turned into fuel. And now they can't touch you without burning themselves on your silence. Because silence ain't soft anymore. It's sharpened steel. It cuts. It stings. It reminds. You used to break your back trying to make them comfortable. Dimming your glow, holding your breath, second-guessing your every damn move. All just to be liked. All just to keep peace that wasn't even yours to keep. Fuck that. Peace without self-respect is a prison. And you kick the damn door off the hinges. No more walking on eggshells to protect fragile egos. No more folding yourself into quiet corners just so loud cowards can feel tall. You don't owe them softness. You don't owe them explanations. You don't owe them the watered-down version of your truth just to make it easier to swallow. You didn't flip the table because you're angry. You flipped it because it was rigged, stacked, fake as hell. A stage where snakes wore suits and liars clapped the loudest. And you sat through all of it, with every bone in your body screaming, every cell saying run. But you stayed, you observed, you remembered, then you tore that shit down without raising your voice. That's power, not noise, not theatrics, not empty dominance. The kind of power that moves like a whisper and hits like a fucking earthquake. The kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. Because the energy shifts the second you walk in. You're not seeking revenge. You're living it. You're the walking reminder of every underdog they left for dead. Every quiet soul they tried to smother. Every misfit they humiliated when they thought no one was watching. You were watching. You saw everything. And you didn't forget. They underestimated the rage of someone who never got a seat at the table. So you became the table. Unapologetically. Unfiltered. Unfuckwithable. Every time they called you soft, you got stronger. Every time they laughed, you got quieter. But not weak. Not broken. Just colder, focused, patient. They never taught you how to fight. They taught you how to endure. And that's so much worse for them, because a person who's been broken 1,000 times and still stands up, that ain't a person anymore. That's a fucking reckoning. Your silence isn't just a choice, it's a mirror. And when they look into it, they see every cowardly thing they ever did, every lie they told, every mask they wore. And they panic, because they can't erase it, can't unsee it, can't spin it. It's there, staring back at them with the same eyes they once mocked. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, you didn't throw tantrums. You became the kind of force they only talk about in whispers, the kind that smiles without blinking, that moves like thunder in silk, that doesn't need to say a word to burn the whole illusion down. They thought they'd crushed you. They thought you'd stay buried. They thought wrong. You were just beneath the surface, sharpening your teeth, biting your tongue, not out of fear, out to strategy. And when the time was right, you rose, didn't ask, didn't knock, didn't wait for permission. You took up space, space they told you wasn't yours, space they tried to keep locked behind closed doors and fake-ass smiles, space they thought was safe from people like you, the ones who remember, the ones who keep score, the ones who rise without mercy and reclaim every inch of what was stolen. And you walked in like smoke, unbothered, uncaged, unfazed, because you weren't there for their approval. You were there to make the whole fucking room choke on their own arrogance. You're not the same anymore. You're not asking for a seat. You're dragging the whole goddamn house down by the foundation. You don't move like a guest anymore. You walk like the place owes you rent. Like every floorboard remembers the weight of your silence. Like every wall's still echoing the things you didn't say. You didn't show up to be liked. You showed up because the version of you that stayed quiet, that version got sick of choking on truth, got tired of nodding to bullshit, got exhausted carrying everybody else's comfort while your own spine cracked in the background. You carried it all. The judgment, the fake-ass smiles, the conversations where they pretended not to hear you. Like your voice was just background noise to their delusions. They'd talk over you with that condescending tone, pat you on the head like you were a child who didn't know better. They'd smirk when you spoke up, act like your pain was drama, label your clarity as crazy, twist your truth into tantrums, and you still held it in. You still sat there, still smiled, still played the game. But inside, you were clocking every one of them, not with bitterness, with precision, like a surgeon, like a storm waiting for its cue, because you learned something they never could: how to sit in fire and not burn, how to feel everything and still move like ice, how to wear your scars like fucking war paint, while they hid behind filters and fake confidence and shallow approval. You watched them break people. You watched them tear down anyone who didn't fold into their mold. And you thought maybe, just maybe, if you played it safe, you'd be spared. But they came for you anyway, because that's what they do. They can smell power before it's fully cooked, and they'd rather destroy it than deal with what it exposes in themselves. You weren't weak. You were dangerous, just too disciplined to show it. They needed you small, quiet, compliant, grateful just to be allowed to exist in their little fantasy world. They didn't want you strong, didn't want you loud, didn't want you raw and real and razor sharp. Because that version of you, that version doesn't flinch. That version walks in with smoke in their lungs and hell behind their eyes. That version doesn't ask, am I enough? That version knows they were always too fucking much for people who never knew how to handle depth. You cracked open the silence and showed your teeth. And the whole room started trembling like a lie that finally got caught. Because they remember how they treated you. They remember the side comments, the fake laughs, the little power plays. And they realize you remember too. They see it in your eyes, that stillness, that stare, the one that says, I heard everything. I just stopped giving a fuck. You became untouchable, not because you shouted, but because you outlasted every jab, every side eye, every backhanded compliment designed to keep you on a leash. And when you rose, you did it without permission, without apology, and without looking back. They don't know what to do with that. With someone who no longer needs them. With someone who doesn't flinch when abandoned, doesn't chase when ghosted, doesn't shrink when overlooked. You don't chase closure. You are the closure. Your existence is a red flag in the face of every coward who thought they could keep you quiet. Because you didn't just survive. You evolved into the exact kind of storm they prayed would never find its way back to their doorstep. And it's too late. You've already seen through it. Through the masks, the games, the hierarchy built on fear and shallow praise. You saw the strings behind the performance and cut every single one of them with a smile. You don't play by their rules anymore. You are the glitch in their system. The moment you stopped needing their validation, the whole damn script unraveled. Because your silence used to make them feel safe, comfortable, superior. But your voice, your presence, full and unchained, it wrecks their reality. You walk into the same rooms they used to control, and suddenly they get quieter. Suddenly the ones who couldn't shut up before are staring at their phones, fidgeting with fake confidence, because the energy shifted, and they know they're standing in the presence of the one they used to laugh at, the one who kept receipts instead of revenge fantasies. They sense it, that you're not trying to belong anymore, that you're not interested in playing nice, not here to smooth over lies, not in the mood to make yourself palatable for people choking on their own mediocrity. You got too real, too raw, too fucking honest, and nothing scares them more than someone who doesn't flinch when the truth stings. You used to question your tone, water down your words, apologize for your intensity, and dim your genius to fit in with cowards who built their self-worth on keeping others small. They called you too much, too dramatic, too sensitive, when what they really meant was, you see too much, you can't be controlled. You ain't chaotic, you're clear, and clarity is lethal to people who survive off confusion. They can't stand that you figured it out, that all the things they told you to hate about yourself were the exact things they feared the most. Your passion, uncontrollable. Your pain, uncompromising. Your memory, unforgiving. They wanted you confused, not curious. They wanted you reactive, not strategic. They wanted you broken enough to stay in line, but not strong enough to burn the whole map and carve your own path. You learned. You unlearned. You rebuilt from the wreckage they left you in. Piece by jagged piece. With no blueprint, no backup, no cheer squad. Just grit. Just fire. Just that steady drumbeat in your chest saying, keep walking. And while they were partying off your silence, you were reprogramming your entire nervous system to stop apologizing for being a goddamn hurricane in a world of breezes. You don't fold under pressure anymore. You thrive in it. You don't break under judgment. You study it. You don't get triggered by shade. You turn it into thunder. They still don't get it. They think the flipped table was the climax. That moment, you finally snapped. That outburst they've been secretly waiting on just so they can say, see, I knew they were unstable, but that wasn't rage. That was release. That was years of self-abandonment detonating in real time. That was every repressed scream coming out in the shape of clarity. That was the moment you stopped begging to be understood and started making motherfuckers listen. And it shook them, because they expected fireworks. But what they got was a controlled burn, silent, precise, unapologetic, and permanent. That permanent kind of shift doesn't come with announcements or warnings. It just shows up in your posture, in the way you enter a room without shrinking, in the way your eyes don't dart around for approval anymore. It shows up in the way your silence feels heavier than their loudest noise. That's when they realize it ain't a phase. It's your era. The one built from all the shit they thought would destroy you. You're not in recovery. You're in rebirth. You don't walk like someone healing. You walk like someone who scorched the blueprint and started drawing new lines with a blowtorch. You don't need revenge fantasies or dramatic takedowns. You are the consequence. The living, breathing reminder that whatever game they were playing, you finished it before they even figured out the rules. They used to think you were passive because you let them talk, because you didn't swing back every time they threw shade, because you smiled when they rolled their eyes. What they never realized was that wasn't fear. That was patience. Calculated, intentional, uncomfortable for them patience. You were never scared. You were measuring. You were watching who switched up in rooms without applause, who acted real sweet when the lights were on, but turned venomous in the dark. You saw it all, and you stored it like ammo. Not for war, but for clarity, because you don't move off emotion anymore. You move off evidence. You know what loyalty looks like now. Not just when you're useful, not just when you're quiet, not just when you're easy to love, but when you're loud, raw, exhausted, brilliant, inconvenient, and still breathing fire. They were never ready for this version, the version that doesn't explain, doesn't justify, doesn't flinch when called too intense or hard to read. The version that sets boundaries without needing to soften them with fake smiles. The version that walks away mid-conversation because your peace matters more than their passive-aggressive games. You stopped being manageable. And that scared the hell out of people who only knew how to love you conditionally. People who needed you to stay predictable, controllable, digestible. But you're not meant to be digested. You're meant to be felt. Deep, direct, disruptive. You turned your awkwardness into authority. You turned your anxiety into intuition. You turned your trauma into a roadmap that shows others how to crawl out of their own graves. And the same people who called you dramatic, they studying your every move now, trying to mimic your energy, trying to reframe the past, trying to align themselves with your glow, like they weren't the same ones who dimmed it with their bullshit. It's wild how quiet they get once you start speaking with your chest. How their memory starts glitching the moment your truth makes them uncomfortable. How the same ones who mocked your boundaries start calling you too guarded once they lose access. You ain't bitter. You're just not stupid anymore. You see the patterns now. You feel the energy shift before words are even said. You pick up on the fake concern, the subtle shade disguised as jokes. The discomfort they show when you stand in your full, loud, uncensored self. You stopped giving passes to people who couldn't handle your growth. You stopped begging for crumbs from people who can't even feed their own damn souls. You stopped explaining the fire inside you to people who've only ever known smoke. You walk different now, not because you're arrogant, but because you remember how it felt to be invisible in places you were keeping alive.